Good morning. Welcome to the show. I'm Jefferson Spatchcock, and this is what I hope to be a return to kind of an almost normally scheduled installment from my channel, trying to do the early Saturday ones. And not that early for me. I mean, it's just still technically morning. We got 15 more minutes, but for every time zone west of me here in the U.S., it's still going to be the morning for a little bit longer. Um, So today I'm going to be covering a couple short ones from Tom Rabbit. He had a couple quick ones on here, both of which one is Darth debating somebody on TikTok, which is the one I'm going to do first. That's the earlier one, and then the most recent one is I think Darth back in a Discord room. So apparently maybe he doesn't have enough time on he's only got so much live time he can do on TikTok. I don't know. I don't go live on TikTok. I don't have enough followers to do that. It's not a social media thing that I've used that enough to know, what the limitations are. But apparently, he can only get so much TikTok in him. He needs to still supplement with the tried and true Discord hangout rooms. So, yeah, we're just going to be covering those. Nothing really in context here. This one, Darth Dawkins versus popular TikTok debater Dean. This is the first time I've ever heard of a TikTok debater named Dean. If anyone else knows who he is, great. But he tries his best in this. The shallow pool of Christian apologetics, or the deep end of fundamentalist evangelical insanity. Take your pick. So we're going to be taking a look at that. Give a shout out to a few people here. Anthony Palma, you were here first. Thank you, sir. Being here live. Maynard Saves. Ailey's fake name. Marty is here. Good to see you. JL Warren from Bridge of the Divide. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. The Monk. Reggie, good morning from the desert. Oh, that was definitely morning for you. JR, good to see you as well. Charlenoir. Let's see. Clive Gordon is here. Hotel Yugoslavia. Good to see you. Morning from London. Is it morning there? I'm pretty sure it's afternoon, right? Let's see. Justin Manchester. Nah, dude, he left TikTok after the face review. Oh, serious? Did he really? Is he gone? Oh, that is hilarious. Oh my God. AR is here. Or the Black Hole of Stupid. Yeah, it's that too. Howdy from Philly. Vanguard Shield. Paul D. Good to see you. Nitty is here. Good to see you, Nitty. Also, congratulations again on hitting 400 subs. That was a fun show. Thanks for having me on. And Lori Hayes is here. Good to see you all. Okay, so with this one, yeah, I guess we're going to get into this one. So maybe this was from 9 days ago. So I kind of put off doing this one because it's really short and there's really not a lot going on, but there's some decent, Darth Dawkins duplicitousness in it. So we can jump into that. With that being said, I'll get this video started here after I, shrink myself down. Let's see here. Let's put that cinema view. Oh, Simus Funk is here. Good to see you, my friend. And thank you for the reminder. Let's see. Michael Fredgren is here. And Rainrick is here. Good morning to you all. Let me take care of one piece of... let's see. Live. Taking care of some housekeeping here. I always love it when Simus does this. And I always forget to pin it. So I'm going to pin it. Okay. All right. That being said, I think Nitty asked, how did Darth get banned? I don't know that he got banned. I think he just left. I think he threw a fit. He took his toys and went home. From the sounds of it, from what Justin mentioned, which is hilarious. And that would explain why I haven't really seen a lot of TikTok. Yeah, well, I was expecting a lot more content to be coming out of people from his TikTok stuff, but he was banning people at such fast rate. I got banned for 6 months from his channel, and then turned around, and there's a dope in this one, the one with the cartoon kid avatar that you can see on the sidebar of his video. Tone Low, that's Antonio Fletcher, who is an amazing idiot. I went into his channel and he recognized my name. I didn't even make a comment. I didn't type a thing. I went in there and all of a sudden he stopped whatever he was talking about. It had something to do with, being anti-birth control as usual. And which is interesting because if you've ever seen, Antonio Fletcher, or heard him speak, you know that he already carries a lot of that that birth control energy with him. So I think that's why he's so against it. I don't think he's getting the breeding time that he wants, and he's quite upset about that and suppressing it in his righteousness. But yeah, he banned me for 6 months, and he's still on there. He's still on there running his whole, he's a pro-lifer. Like he is not. He is just anti-abortion. John May says, "Wait, he got banned from TikTok?" I don't think he got banned. I think he left in a huff. I think that's what happened. But who knows? That's just what Justin said, that he quit. So I guess it's over. The interesting thing about that is how he thinks, like, okay, if he packs up and leaves, that face reveal is going to follow him to Discord, back to YouTube, back to Clubhouse, if Clubhouse becomes something other than just like the dumpster fire it's become, or not Discord. What was it? Clubhouse. So all right, yeah, funny. Okay, so yeah, it was a short ride. Justin says Tone Loc is the most sympathetic of all Darth's side characters. He's loyal, that's for sure. I think that's the only way that he's actually sympathetic. That, and one time he came out, he took a stand against Darth when Darth was talking about it was something Darth was basically trying to say he was trying to pressure Otangelo Grasso into not having a discussion with J.L. Warren, because J.L. Warren had said things that Darth believed were quote unquote slanderous and libelous and all that kind of stuff. He gets into that shit. And then Otangelo's argument was, I gave my word. And Darth's argument was, yeah, fuck that shit. Fuck your word. He said something bad to me, and if you want to be in good with me, you won't go. And Tone Loc was like, I don't think that's a good path to take. If Grasso gave his word, he should go. He shouldn't just chicken out just because you're pressured, because you have a beef with him. That's not cool, man. And of course, Darth respectfully disagreed. Kidding, not kidding. So yeah, that's why I say Grasso. I think that's less. It's less likely to trigger it. So. Yeah, Space. So Darth can't put his selfie back in the bottle. He will find. Yeah, it's permanent. So yeah, it happens. And I feel for him. I mean, I've revealed my face on purpose. I've actually been on camera, which to the pleasure and pain of others. I mean, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. So my guess is more pain than pleasure. And I have been on camera in ways that I really didn't want to be, falling asleep while quite inebriated, or half naked, disrobing and going to bed. If you want to see that content, it's available on my OnlyFans channel, which is never linked here. Just kidding. If I had an OnlyFans channel, it would be the lowest. I would be the lowest paid OnlyFans person in the history of OnlyFans. All right, folks. Enough tangents. JL says that was an entertaining debate. Yeah, but it was. Uncle Jerry says it's true. I witnessed the horror. For anyone that knows what I'm talking about, my shirtless, half awake, stumble from the chair to the bed video. Yeah, I have lost a little weight since then, so I'm a little less. It's a little less alarming, but still, yeah, don't watch it. I encourage you not to. It's more disturbing than anything else. These political commercials on YouTube are obnoxious. Are they going through live now? Since YouTube changed the algorithm on the ads, I have different controls in the studio, so I don't know. I don't know when and what is going in when I'm doing stuff live, because I think it used to be they wouldn't show up while I was live, but they would show up, if somebody was watching it after the fact. And then I think it was always like online games. Spatcher's Hasselhoff moment. Yeah, if only I'd had a hamburger at the time. That's what I wanted. If I'd had a cheeseburger, and a relative there that I could, simultaneously cry into the burger and yell at them. Spatchy and Gavin. I've never once done one shirtless in bed. Maybe I should. All right. So here we go. He says, yes, ads are on live. Yeah, and as far as I know now, I don't think you can turn them off. because that was one of the things that we got. The only thing I think I can do is I can go in and manually install them, or I can set the time limit. Usually the only thing I know that I do, what I usually do is let it pick, but I put it on the lowest setting, the most conservative, so there's as few ads as possible. That's about all I can do now. They really changed the controls on that. It's weird. Uncle Charlie is recommending. He's recommending a technique that YouTube does not encourage, but it's in the chat if anyone wants to read it. Oh, really? Yeah, I was too. I paid for premium because I was getting bombarded with Epoch Times ads. Yeah, so was I. Especially with some of the stuff that I get into. If I'm watching apologists and stuff like that, the algorithm just starts feeding your right-wing news feeds. So okay, enough meandering. Let's jump into this one. Darth Dawkins versus popular TikTok debater Dean. Let's see what he does. Usual rules apply. If you guys can't hear this, start screaming at me in the live chat.
Okay, we're going to go one at a time. I'm inviting people in on the list so that they don't get discouraged. Okay, so we're going to go one at a time. Dean, what would you like to say?
Yeah, I heard you talking about like the Genesis account of creation. And
yeah, get closer to your microphone, Dean.
There we go. It should be much better now. Can you hear me better now?
Yes, it is. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. So earlier you were talking about the Genesis account of creation, and I just wanted to give you a couple of problems with that I see in Genesis and see what you think of them.
Okay.
So it's going to be a problem. I call it the problem of incest. So we know.
Dean,
go ahead.
Hey, Dean, listen to me. I have a few rules for my stream. Okay, I'm going to let you speak at length, but when you hear my voice, it's time to pause.
I got you, Darth.
And remember to bow, even though you're not on camera. Remember to bow down, touch your forehead to the ground.
Being obstructive, we can discuss that. Now, I just want to make a qualification. Okay. How many times do you think, literally, and I'm not being funny, how many times do you think I've heard this alleged problem? You think this is new to me?
Well, I don't know. I kind of just was reading Genesis the other night and came up with this.
Okay, so
I mean, I don't know if
it's sides to Dean. Okay, so I'll be short. Okay, I've heard this hundreds of times before. I am well prepared to answer what you're about to lay out. So go.
And what he's prepared with, the response that he's prepared with, if anyone knows how deep into intelligent design apologetics Darth is, will not be surprised where he goes with this. But Dean is basically saying, hey, it's something occurred to me when I was reading Genesis, and it's this whole, the implication that if these are the only people on the earth, how are kids happening? What's going on there?
Awesome. Yeah. So it just has to do with like, the fact that God created humanity to be perfect, right? But then he had the prior knowledge that the only way that this goal of reproduction multiplication was possible was in sex. And given this prior knowledge and given the fact that he did not intend humanity to sin, this must mean that insects, at least in that context or to some degree, is not wrong. What are your takes on this?
Here comes Darth and Tone.
Did you say insects?
I know you mean incest, but you kept saying insects, like crawling creatures on the ground, bro.
It's just a TikTok safe way of saying it.
Oh, okay.
Half a beat. Oh right. Okay. How to maximize views and minimize getting flagged. Something Darth doesn't really think about.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Well, so here's the problem, right? That some of Adam and Eve's sons and daughters married each other and procreated does not pose a problem at all.
At all. Okay. That's kind of cool. Chase Fiorenza, howdy Jefferson, on a 10.5-hour flight from Germany back to the U.S. and figured it'd be an appropriate time to jump in and say hi. Well, it is. Thanks for joining. It's kind of cool now that people can kind of join this stuff while on it's been a long time since I've been on a flight, especially a long one. And the last time I was on one was long enough ago that I didn't really get online. So I really couldn't. But I hope you have a safe flight. And welcome back to the U.S. when you get here.
Okay.
Okay. Why not?
Well, so as I told you before, I've dealt with this. Since God created human beings, their genetic code would have been created. When God got done creating Adam and Eve, he said he declared everything was good. So that would have included the Adam and Eve's genome.
Did you catch that, folks? So when God says, when it says in Genesis, God said everything was good, that includes the genome of Adam and Eve. Cool. JL says, I always imagine he had kind of an Air Star thing going on behind the scenes. If anyone isn't aware of that reference, Air Star is one of the bad guys from Preacher, the comic and TV show. And yeah, actually, I should probably be trying to use more Air Star videos for either Darth or Pine Creek. I think it could kind of work for both.
So therefore, there would not have been any cumulative genetic mistakes from genetic entropy in the earliest stages of human reproduction. So,
okay, so let me grab this comment here real quick, and then I'll comment on what he's doing here. I've been a fan of your channel for years now, despite my Christian inclinations of the existentialist variety. I agree. I kind of agree with you there. I tend towards those inclinations myself. Your commentary is always thoughtful, funny, and thorough. Kudos. Thank you very much, Chase. I appreciate that. So anytime you hear Darth saying something like, when you hear the phrase genetic entropy come out of a wannabe apologist's mouth, that's ID. That's intelligent design, just boop, popping up there. And it's just a crap. It's not supported by the scientific community. It's not. It's not. I don't even think. I think it falls well short of even being a viable hypothesis. It's nowhere near close enough to be considered a theory. And these guys talk about it like as if it as well established as scientists acknowledge the theory of evolution is, and they refuse to. They just insert genetic entropy. Well, the more people, the more things breed, the more information they lose, and it's like, that's not quite what's going on there. And there are a lot of different explanations in biology about why that's not the case. And if you're interested in that, just look that up. Everything from horizontal gene transfer, I think, is that what it's called? HGT? Mechanisms of natural selection that these guys are not taking into account because they just think there's only so much genes, and then people start breeding, and then the more they breed, I've literally heard apologists say that we are counting down. We are kind of breeding ourselves. It's like a copy of a copy. We're Xeroxing ourselves thinner and thinner, and pretty soon we're all just going to be a bunch of cross-eyed flipper people. Just kind of rolling around on the ground, gathering nutrients through our blowholes or something like that barely work. Sorry, I don't know where that imagery came from, but it's early and I'm not caffeinated. So he's going to try to justify this somehow, and I've heard this one before. Well, they had all the genes, they had the best genes, the good genes, and so if they happen to hook up only for procreation's sake, that's what they'll say, they can produce kids, and those kids basically just all have they have all the best genes too, minus a tiny fraction of them, and then everything's going to happen. Watch where this goes.
that when Adam and Eve, some of the sons and daughters married and had children, then they would not have produced defective offspring. But given genetic entropy after a couple of thousand years occurring, then God prohibited in very stern terms that there was not to be any interbreeding like that.
There's no real justification for doing this. This isn't even really a dogma. This isn't a Christian dogma. This is more like some kind of weird online Christian conspiracy theory. JL says it's just evangelical rebranding of air catastrophe, which was a hypothesis that debunked back in the 80s. I should look that up because I don't know. That sounds familiar. I'm sure I've heard of it, but I've mostly been acquainted with it as this genetic entropy rebrand that these guys keep talking about as if they've got evolution on the ropes and on the run, and how many other metaphors you want to use for that. Cross-eyed flipper people, that would be awesome, but a little bit gross too. As you've seen, the love I give to preacher clips, definitely use those ASAP. It's an endless treasure trove of references. I did use one of the Jesus tap dancing Christ image for one of my videos. I just had 2 Mormons in my kitchen in the UK. They thought I was inviting them in to convert me. It didn't go well. Well, that's always interesting. The last time I talked to any Mormons, they came up to my folks' house. I was there. My brother was visiting, my twin brother, and he and I were sitting outside. And this was long enough ago. I think I was still smoking, so this was years and years ago. And they walked up and wanted to know if we wanted to talk about Jesus. And my brother, knowing that I was an atheist, just pointed at me. I think my brother had recently deconstructed, but he just pointed at me. He's like, "Hey, you want to talk to that guy?" And then just gave a chuckle. And they gave a nervous look at each other, like, "Why?" And I just kind of like waved them off, like, you really don't have time to get into this conversation. You probably just you should go to the next house. Um, you're just going to get frustrated and sad.
We now know in part why that was, because it can produce a high likelihood of genetic defects. And in fact, I think that God.
Yeah, that's a good point, Daniel Cooper. Even though it is, he would say that you're being glib. I thought Dede believed in the uniformity of nature. The idea that nature is going to be one way, and then at some point God has to directly intervene with the breeding habits of humans and impose this rule. Hey, don't now you can't do that. Before it was okay, you could have sex with your sister or your brother or your dad or your mom or your uncles or your cousins. It wasn't going to be a problem because you got such good genes, the best genes, the pure genes, grade A, or the original stuff, the best stock. And go nuts. Get as pregnant as you can from as many people as you can. It doesn't matter how closely they are related to you. Yeah, that's weird. That's a weird take. And then at some point it's like, hey, don't do that, because now if you as a man try to get your sister or your mom pregnant, you will produce kids that are genetically inferior and genetically damaged, and God no longer wants that. But apparently, as long as the issue of genetic damage was off the table, it was perfectly moral to have sex with your mom and your sister if you're a guy, vice versa if you're a girl. Now, the interesting thing about this, of course, it's not going to be okay to engage in sexual activity with relatives of the same sex. So just dismiss that from your little minds right now. These guys don't understand that, right? Orientation isn't a thing as far as they're concerned. Gay is a verb, it's based on what you do. It's not based on what you want. So yeah, some real problems here. And if you've seen this before, if you've seen other ones like this, if Dean is halfway savvy, Dean is going to go after that aspect of it, not the orientation part. So if it weren't for the fact that we would produce genetically damaged offspring, it's okay for us to be having sex with direct relatives?
God's command to wipe out the Amalekites and the Canaanites was in part due to the fact of their sexual deviancy, resulting in severe genetic defects
that is nowhere in the Bible. The idea from some of the stories is that the Israelites are claiming that some of the other Canaanite tribes are deviant and are engaged in practices that are abominations to God. One of them comes from the story where they're hooking up with, in fact, this was Phineas. He stabs the Israelite who's in mid coitus, so to speak, with the Midianite woman, and he runs both of them through. If you are aware of, if you're a fan of Sherlock Holmes mysteries and basic physics and anatomy, you should know that it's incredibly hard to run a spear all the way through another living thing. Happens all the time in the movies, but people are squishy, people are pokeable, but they're not that squishy and they're not that pokeable. And this dude just kung fu's his way through 2 people. Probably not. That sounds like a lot of exaggeration, but it happened. And that guy was like, and because of his act, they were able, God saw mercy on them, because this dude pulls off this like WWE move via a horror movie. And then Everybody's good to go. But then the Israelites need to straighten up, fly right, and then kill as many Midianites as possible because they were just too damn sexy and got in their pants too quickly. And they need to just scrub them off the face of the earth so that none of that sexy naughty time happens again. It doesn't actually really say explicitly what's going on. The narrative going on there is basically a justification from whoever wrote those stories why the Israelites need to stay away from intermingling with these people because they're quote unquote impure. There really isn't a lot of I don't think there's any archaeological evidence to show that anything like the early Israelites ever annihilated Midianites or Amalekites. They just don't think that ever happened. But they got lots of stories talking about how they did that. Why they needed to do that because these people were gross and impure or whatever. The idea that he's saying here is that, well, the thing is they needed to get rid of these people because they were just too damn weird and gross, and it was the sexual immorality, but also because they were producing genetically screwed up kids. Nothing about genetically screwed up people is anywhere in any of those narratives of the Old Testament. That is him reading that into that. He understands that from our understanding of what happens when incestual relations bear children, but there's nothing like that in those texts. This is eisegesis from him, so he should stop doing that because that's bad. He's being a bad believer.
Would affect future generations and other culture and country.
X-Files home. All I'm saying, the best depiction and most accurate depiction of where incest is taking, right? Or no, I'm not gonna. I'm gonna end up punching low on a state if I try to compare it. What state is that based in? I can't remember where the family was. I can't remember their names either. Yeah, it's not a good look. Good morning, Jay. Darth Dawkins, incest apologist, but only for them. Ancient incest apologist, ancient Jay. Modern, no, you can't because God said no.
Groups is part of the reason why he had them wipe them out. So the idea of Adam and Eve's sons and daughters marrying and having children does not pose any problem.
Okay. There's like
that doesn't pose a problem. It doesn't. Darth doesn't see the problem right off the bat with that. Oh no, as far as them having kids, not an issue. Okay.
3 responses I have to this, and I'd seriously love to get your take on them. I think you're an incredibly smart Christian. I love watching your lives. You've even popped up in my Discord a couple times, and I always love listening to you. I think you know what you're talking about. So the first response to this would be, well, it seems like if say I were to have like an infertile mother, if I were to sleep with her, it seems like this would still be wrong, of course, for other reasons, but it wouldn't be wrong for the reason that it's incest.
You are Dean. Okay. You are conflating the intermarriage of brothers and sisters with the term of incest on a broader cultural context.
Yeah, don't bring incense into this. Incense did nothing wrong.
Okay. I'm sorry. I thought what I was more so doing was just like because you say like incest is not going to be wrong if like this disposition towards genetically malformed offspring is not present. So I was just trying to think of like a hypothetical.
That's not what he said.
Yeah.
He said incest is wrong in virtue of God's command.
So it's wrong in virtue of God's command. I thought, but then he justified it. It's not. Let's play that back a bit.
Okay, so we've covered
offspring is not present. So I was just trying to think of like a hypothetical.
That's not what he said.
Yeah.
He said incest
was just like because you say like incest is not going to be wrong if like this disposition towards genetically malformed offspring is not present. So I was just trying to think of like a hypothetical.
That's not what he said.
Yeah.
I can't see the name on that guy. I think it's.
He said incest is wrong in virtue of God's command.
He said it's wrong in virtue of God's command. So if God commanded you now to get your mom pregnant, it would be right. It would be okay to do, right? According to this guy's logic. So, and if it's wrong, if Darth is trying to say it's wrong by virtue of God's command, why did he justify God's decision with a genetic explanation? Oh, no, God came out against incest when people's genes started running dry and we started producing cross-eyed flipper people. Then he needed to pump the brakes and be like, hey, folks, you can't keep it in the family anymore. You need to go out and check with your neighbors if you want to do that. And if that's the case, here's the question that I would have. If you really believe in genetic entropy, where is this additional information coming from the other people around you? Because they were produced from the people that you bred with before. The entailments on this are really, really bad. If you believe in a literal take on Genesis, on this narrative, there's just two people and they start producing all of the population of the planet. Everyone on the planet is going to come from the same gene line. So what they're basically saying is, well, there was a magic gene line, genetic line, and it was able to produce X number of people. And then after that, if you start having sex with direct relatives, then you'll start producing cross-eyed flipper people. Okay. Well, then it stands to reason that it's only a matter of time before you end up having sex with a total stranger, have absolute no relation to you, and you produce cross-eyed flipper people because everyone is inbred now. The only way that you really get around this is if you understand that there are components in natural selection that prevent this kind of thing from happening, that allow new genetic information to emerge, new combinations to happen, that prevent this kind of, this kind of degradation from occurring. They don't want to admit that. So instead, it's just this weird, well, all the genes were there, and then they exploded, and that was, they were able to breed and interbreed. And then after a point, God just arbitrarily decided, no, you know what? Don't be having sex with your mom and your cousins and your sisters and your brothers anymore, because now your genes are getting thin. Eyebrows go up. And did he say that? Did God justify that? Of course he didn't. And this guy's half right there, at least like 20% right. If God's telling people, no, you can't have sex with your mom and your dad. No, you can't have sex with your brothers and sisters. Don't be doing that anymore because you're wearing your genes out. Where's that in the Bible?
Okay, so we've covered this. You haven't offered a cogent rebuttal. What's your next point?
So why would this not be a cogent rebuttal?
Because there's nothing there. There's a nothing burger.
No, genetic entropy. I would agree. There's nothing there with regards to genetic entropy because it's not accepted. Nicola, what the hell did I walk into talking about making people from Louisiana? Well, yeah. It's the classic. It's one of Darth's classic apologetic arguments. Incest was okay up to a point. Darth's conceding that God deliberately made humans fully knowing all of this in advance. Yeah, in a way. And I think the other guy's point might have been true. Like, no. The only way this was going to stick with people is if they just accepted it as like God's command. Okay. God's original command was to be fruitful and multiply, which if there's only just a small handful of direct relatives, their command from God is to get in the pit and love someone. I mean, sorry for that old reference, but they need to start getting it on and producing as many people as possible to get those genes started. But once those genes start, they're going to be going back and forth on this, producing people all over the place. It's going to get really weird. This is not a good understanding of how, this is this weird merger of the magical thinking that you want to take from a literalist interpretation of the accounts from Genesis, and then kind of stir that into a conspiracy theory wannabe hypothesis for how genes work. All to justify that. No, the Bible's not wrong about that. Like, yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. It's wrong. Nicholas, so the morality changed. Yeah, and he doesn't want to acknowledge that. And that's what Dean asked. Like, well, wait a minute. So provided that there wasn't a problem with producing genetically damaged kids, having sex with direct relatives was okay. And now Darth is like, no, that's a nothing burger. Battle faster. I hear banjos.
Burger.
Okay. Okay. Where did I mishear you then? Because I thought I hear you say
I didn't hear anything of substance. So here's the problem. So am I correct that you object to one or more things in the Bible, making it incompatible that the Bible is the Word of God?
I don't know about it being incompatible with the Word of God. It would just mean that it's not compatible with the truth and observable reality and scientific understanding about how genes work.
Yeah. Do you mind if I try to like re-explain my objection? Because I think it was of substance.
So are you making an adjudication that the Bible is not the Word of God?
I don't know what an adjudication is, but
It means a judge. It means a judgment. Are you making a judgment? Hey, Dean, remember when I said when you hear me, be quiet?
Okay, I just thought that you kind of wrote off what I said.
Dean, this is not a free-for-all.
You wrote off what I said. I think it was.
If you're in these kinds of debates on either TikTok or Discord, or any of these places, they basically are a free-for-all. It's funny that he's saying it's not a free. It's a free-for-all for him. He reserves the right to flip out and ban people just because. Rodent cross-eyed flipper people. I'm never going to see a merman. If anybody has not seen that movie, Cabin in the Woods, watch that movie. The merman, the mer people. Holy crap! My favorite.
Bye, Dean. Bye, Dean. Have a nice day. Act like a child, treated like a child.
Yeah, I was.
He's not the one that believes it was once okay to have sex with your family to produce kids until God said no. Act like a child, get treated like a child. Like, this is like, okay, all right.
I was on his channel the other day debating him about.
Ladies and gentlemen, Antonio Fletcher. Yeah, let's see what he's got to add.
Well, it didn't actually get that far. We were supposed to talk about abortion, but when I told him my worldview, he pivoted to just asking me questions about slavery and doing a little stupid exercise he was trying to do with you, and he muted me multiple times, tried to steamroll me, that kind of thing. And
they pivot so fast, I have to go to the chiropractor several times a week.
Whiplash reference.
Yeah.
The condition, not the movie.
I think I caught his gist. What he's trying to do is he's trying to moralize at us.
No, I think he's trying to make sure that you guys are consistent with your capacity to moralize back at us. It's really difficult for Christians to turn around and jump up on a high horse and say, you know what? There's certain sexual things that you're not allowed to do. And then somebody's like, wait a minute, what about all the incest entailed by this literal idea that only a handful of people exist, direct relatives, and they're going to populate the entire earth? Oh, that's perfectly fine as far as God's concerned, because you see, according to our, goofy ass take on how genes work, it's perfectly acceptable to do that because you're going to produce perfectly good genetically viable offspring. Oh, so as long as I can produce genetically viable offspring with a direct relative, God is okay with me having sex with them. No, that's not what I said. Why is that? Well, because now you can't do it. Oh, so it's relative morality. Because now we physically don't have the capacity to do that. Now it's wrong. So it's not based on some kind of godly standard. It's based on physical conditions, real world circumstances. That's weird. How do you ground that morality? Well, God said so. Oh, okay. But God first told you to be fruitful and multiply with your mom.
Yeah.
Am I next?
I believe that 5GW is next.
Yeah, it is me.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, so I want to talk about just briefly an issue I've been having with.
Did you catch that, Tom Rabbit? Hope you upload.
So there it is, folks. So that another day, another Dean. Let's close that one out, and we will reshare. Let's get into this is the bad one. Not that any of them are good, but let's see. But this one is funny. Quote, I would probably do something unchristian like. This is a good one. Before I start, so what's Dee Dee's limit on incest? Because there's 13 incidents of kissing cousins in the Bible, sometimes ordered by God. Yeah. And I think there was a study that was done recently. I can't remember where it was released out of Australia or out of the UK, where they had found that in some places, I think that the medical science on it is that if you're talking about cousins twice removed or 3 times removed, the risks of genetic problems are probably reduced to the point where it wouldn't be an issue. So it's not really it's not genetically detrimental to any offspring that are being produced there. But the story then came out that I can't remember how they did this study or how accurate it was, but they tried floating this out there, that even first cousins, probably not that big a concern genetically. Now, obviously, direct siblings, that's going to be a problem, or kids with their parents. But yeah, the idea of like the first cousins are like it was less genetically fraught than previously assumed. I don't think that's changed laws on whether or not people can legally marry their first cousins. So that's interesting, I think. So if Christians see something like that, like, well, wait a minute, it turns out that the genetic first cousins are back on the menu, guys. Like, but they can't because God said no, and they're not doing it because of the gene thing. They're doing it because of God's divine command, according to that one clinger of Darth Dawkins. Like, okay, why is Darth on here then justifying God's decision? If God says you need to have sex with as many people as possible to produce as many kids as possible, it doesn't matter who you're having sex with. I don't care. Just get pregnant now. Okay, get to work. And then God's like, nope, rule change. Now you need to make sure that you're not having sex with direct relatives and maybe not your cousins. Okay. Any justification for that, God? Yeah, I said so. Shut up or take a lightning bolt. Easy. That's easy. But that's not what Darth did. Well, no, God said that because of genetic entropy. Like, get stuffed. Jefferson, I feel like getting up on the Matterhorn and using that big horn to yell out post hoc. Yeah, somebody needs to make a sound that you can just play that, like the party horn. Just...
Hey, Tom Rabbit! I hope
God exists.
Hey, Tom Rabbit!
Can you prove God exists?
Yes, just give me a second. Well, first of all, the very idea that proof is possible means that God exists. Because unless God exists and is the ground of all being, the concrete universal, and actually makes it possible so that we can come to know things, then proof would not be possible for anything because knowledge would be impossible.
Nothing would be here, dipshit. Not Jesus. If everything relies on God, it's not that, and you remove God from things, it's not that proof goes away. Everything goes away. Proof is the least of your problems. I can't believe these guys are still trafficking in this myopic bullshit.
There wouldn't be a metaphysical foundation for truth or reason.
Why can't the foundation be reality?
Oh my God! Here we go again.
Enemy spotted.
That is reality. You're not invoking what it is that would dictate what is or is not. Reality is a term of abstraction. It's
the term used to describe it would be an abstraction, but reality itself is not.
It's referring to a set of all real things. It's not a stipulation of what is it that is identifiable, that it is the ground of all being that dictates what is and cannot be. So it's an answer that people give when they're uninformed and uneducated on the issue.
Does Darth understand the difference between concrete and abstract? I really don't think that he does. I mean, I've talked about this before, but I mean, I'm really getting the impression. Like, not only is he not getting better at it, he might be getting worse.
Because you don't know what else to say. Are you saying then that for all individual or discrete states within the set of all, within the set of them all, that each and of themselves they are absolute?
No, they're particular.
Yeah, you're not understanding the question, or you're purposely being evasive. Is each and every member of the set within
I love this NPC-like response. Answer does not compute. Response denied. Repeats question.
reality, is each member of the set absolute, unconditionally non-dependent, non-derivative?
No, but the set is.
Okay. Well, a set is an abstraction, sir.
That's not true.
That's not a statement of concreteness. It's a statement of abstraction.
So is God.
Okay, yeah, I'm not going to play it.
Now that's a big one. If you say that, if God is concrete or abstract, you can kind of debate that for a long time. I don't. Metaphysics is metaphysical BS is always kind of ticks me off. But this always seems a little bit weird to me, and maybe I'm getting this definition wrong. If somebody wants to set me straight, please do. I think there is something to be said about the distinction between a set of something, if you're talking about that, or things like set theory. That kind of stuff is abstract. It's abstract, like math is abstract. But some of the things that it's describing about the real world, those real things would be concrete. If you were talking about a set of trees, you could hypothesize a set, like a grove, an orchard grove, and you've got 24 trees there. This is abstract, especially in the way you're grouping this just sort of semantically. This is based on kind of like cognitive, just our cognitive processes. That would be abstract. The fact that you're actually referring to an actual grove of 24 trees, there is a grove of 24 trees. That group of trees, that set, that orchard, is real. That's concrete. The language used to describe it is abstract. And I really don't. I think I'm right there. At least, I mean, it is sort of like I'm just kind of splashing in the kids' side of the pool on this without trying to get into anything super deep. I think I have at least a handle on that. I'm not convinced that Darth has that handle yet. I think if you can refer to something as a group or a set, and reality can be referred to as the set of all things in whatever, he just says, "Oh, that's abstract, and it needs to be grounded by something other." Like, okay. I don't know. I don't know how he's making these connections, and he's not explaining them either.
Little teenage game. That's a teenage response. That's not an adult response.
How do you know God is concrete?
Okay, hold on a second. Hold on. Let me look at this guy. I think I know who. Yeah, my app is acting up. I'm gonna have to delete this thing soon. First of all, what you're doing is you're being like Mercury. Okay. First of all, do you know the difference between a concrete object and an abstract object?
Yeah.
Okay. A set is not something that is concrete.
Neither's God.
Okay, you're changing the subject.
I mean, concrete things can be
Sir,
fenced.
okay, listen, Clarke, listen to me. If you don't start reasoning with me like an adult, I'm going to expunge you from the room. Okay. Now, what you're doing is you're not rebutting what I'm saying. You're just segueing on to your attack upon God. And we haven't even gotten there yet. Okay. Now, referring to
Is it? I think it's interesting that Christians think that if the denial of from their dogmatic perspective, if you're not convinced that there's a God, although they don't understand usually what that means, because most of them will not really think about the implications of doxastic involuntarism. But if you're not convinced that there is a God and you state this opinion to them, you are attacking them or attacking God directly or indirectly in your quote unquote denial of him. Right. But that's the dogmatic position that these guys have to push. Which is fascinating, because you would think that if the God that he's talking about is the foundation for all that is possible and impossible, and one of the possibilities is my denial of God, it makes you wonder why God would allow that to be a possibility in the first place. Is it because he wants me to be able to make my own choices and choose him freely, or is it because I'm purpose built for destruction? Some of us are reprobates, doomed, just destined for hell. Who knows? Different parts of the Bible say different things about this, about the implications of that, but Darth's not going to get into that, because the last thing he's going to do is go to the Bible to try to explain any of this kind of stuff, because he sucks at the Bible.
an abstraction, which usually is referring to a set of concrete particulars that are unified abstractly and not concretely.
Right, but that doesn't change the fact that what they're talking about abstractly are concrete things. So I don't understand what he's doing with that. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the stream, Jefferson. Yeah, you're welcome, John. Good to see you, and good morning. Doubting Thomas. Abstract is as abstract does.
So an abstraction does not concretely unify. Okay. Now, if imagine that everything that existed within reality will represent it in a thought experiment as 10 blue marbles. Okay. And I said to you, what is it fundamentally that dictates the actuality of what each marble is and what it cannot be? And you say, all the marbles. Well, all the marbles is an abstraction.
That is the stupidest example I think I've ever heard.
Okay.
First of all, maybe if you're going to set up a hypothetical, maybe let the person you're talking to answer that instead of assuming the answer is going to be what you need to make your goofy example work when it doesn't.
That you're appealing to a set.
Yeah, but abstractions can be causal.
No, your abstractions do not stand in causal relations, sir.
What's the argument for that?
Okay, because they're causally effete. Because
You're
the
just declaring
abstraction,
that.
okay, yeah, I know who you are. You can go to hell.
You gave your wife.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I know who you are. You can go to hell. Very Christian of you. I don't think that you're supposed to curse. I don't even think you're supposed to be calling people like a fool or something. Like damning someone to hell is not Darth's place. That's one of the 7 deadly sins, Darth. That's wrath. Who knows? Darth probably doesn't even hold to that. It's not exactly dogma. The his thing. I'm just gonna play it again.
I spoke you are causally effete. Because
You're
the
just declaring
abstraction,
that.
okay, yeah, I know who you are. You can go to hell.
You gave your wife.
Yeah, I spotted you right away. For some
Hello?
reason, you would have been kicked out here. Bye, little boy. Okay.
I think in terms of like you can go to hell. Okay, that's probably the worst thing a Christian can say to somebody. And this guy comes back with, "You gave your wife something." I'm pretty sure it was probably
What's going on?
No, we just had a stalker, some little punk.
What was he doing?
He's just trolling and slandering.
Trolling.
Yeah, if we were in a room with closed doors with no cameras or windows, I guarantee you he wouldn't say that to me.
Why not?
Why?
Yeah,
Because
why?
he'd be hurting. Because I would do something very unchristian like.
Really?
And then I would say, Your Honor, he attacked me. I had to defend myself. No, he's just a little piece of shit.
So you would attack him and then lie and say that he attacked you.
Yeah, I would probably do something unchristian, yeah.
That's some things unchristian, Darth. That's 2 things that you would do that are unchristian. 1, attack somebody. 2, perjure yourself.
Did you catch that, Tom Rabbit? Hope you upload that to YouTube.
Plus, if you attack somebody and then get caught, and then turn around and say, "No, I was defending myself. They attacked me first," not only are you lying to a judge and committing the legal, legally you're committing perjury, but from a Christian moral perspective, you are bearing false witness against the person whom you attacked. So, where was the Holy Spirit there? Why isn't the Holy Spirit keeping Darth from doing stuff like that? John, I spotted you right away after 5 minutes of talking. Yeah, it's like he suspected who he was. And I'm going to play around with this and figure out who you are. And then when he finally got it to pull up, probably because he's doing this while he's driving, maybe. It was interesting before I got banned when he was on on TikTok. Somebody jumped into the live chat on during one of his live sessions. Was like, is he driving again? Does someone need to make a phone call? It's like, that's hilarious. Like, if he's tooling around in New Jersey, live streaming, behind the wheel of the car, maybe somebody needs to like pull him over. It's a set of unchristian things, yeah, and that's the abstraction, right? There's the assault, there's the lying, there's the bearing false witness. That's a set of unchristian things. That's the abstract thing. Yeah. Whereas Darth boasts about bearing false witness. Yeah, I mean, and he'll probably justify it. You know what? Jesus would have called these people uncircumcised in their hearts. Like, he wasn't bearing false witness, Darth. He didn't attack him and say he didn't attack him and said that they actually attacked him. I was defending myself, Your Honor. I don't remember Jesus ever pulling off something that chicken shit in any of the Gospels. So, how to give it an hear Darth say suffering succotash. He should open his stuff with that. Warren says Darth needs to stick to theology and stop casting himself as a role model for. He actually needs to learn more about theology. Most of his theology, I think, is grounded from like early '80s apologetics, because a lot of his theology is really not great. Pat's here. Good to see you, Pat. Welcome to the show. Thanks for the reminder, Rodent. Yeah. What is up with right-wing evangelicals doing TikTok in their car? Yeah, I mean, it's a good point to make. I don't get it either. I really don't understand it. It would kind of make sense if they, um, I don't know, because wasn't there one guy? Yeah, was that Josh Feuerstein or something like that? He used to do those. Um, those were crazy. There's actually one video I kind of want to get back into here, since I did say I might get into a little bit of a political tangent. So I think I wanted to talk about this video from about 5 months ago. This is actually from Pine Creek, and this one I'm not really criticizing Pine Creek. It's more Andrew Wilson who he's talking to. And let me see where this is at. I think it was the first time. It was after he'd gone to that conference. But I thought this was it was a weird conversation, mostly because of like how just sleazy Andrew Wilson was being in it. Here it is. Okay, so this particular video is called Pine Creek Meets the Crucible for the first time. If anybody knows what the Crucible is, the Crucible is run by Andrew Wilson and I think maybe a couple of other guys. It's basically like a conservative trad ortho Christian bro version of modern day debate, or at least that's what they're going for. And usually it's just Andrew Wilson casting scorn at people that he disagrees with from his weird, I think relatively recently adopted Orthodox Christian perspective. So Pine Creek jumps in there to have a talk with him. And this is like the first time they have a conversation. Now, keep in mind, this is an old one. This is from 5 months ago, but I am playing this for a purpose, to illustrate a point. Andrew, because when I heard about it, it just kept rolling around in my brain. So they're not very, I think they're kind of like friendly now, Andrew Wilson and Doug from Pine Creek. I think that they get along okay at this point. But this may have been like the first time they had a conversation. And so Andrew's bringing it, with his, he's going to stomp the atheist in this conversation. It's pretty clear that's what he's trying to do. So let me bring this back up. We'll add that to the stage. And yeah, let's get this started. And if anybody wants me to turn this off, just let me know.
I don't have an intro song. I would have Dire Straits Money for Nothing. But here he is. Mr. Pine Creek. Welcome. Have you been following the stream so far?
Yeah, most of it. This has been very engaging. I love Andrew. Chris, pleased to meet you.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
You seem like a very nice guy. You're too nice to be in this live stream.
That's what I said.
Morning, Doug. How are you
Morning.
today?
Good to see a fellow conservative.
It's weird. You hear Andrew Wilson say, "Morning, Doug. How are you today?" I don't believe that. Like, I hope Andrew Wilson didn't have any ambitions to be an actor. I don't even believe him when he's saying a greeting. I also think that he's the human personification of a fart in a hot car. But
oh no! I'm a centrist now.
Yeah, Doug. I converted Doug to enlightened centrism and cultural Christianity on the last.
Well, that's
podcast.
okay because I'm converting PF Young. So
keep that in mind, right? So P.F. Young thinks that he's converted Doug to centrist, to cultural Christianity and like basic, kind of centrist, the common sense political perspective. My understanding is that Doug did an entire video where he took one of the political compass tests, and when he took it, he came back as a centrist. He was already a centrist. So this is kind of cute that they're having this little, kind of that moment, like, oh, let's not all start sucking each other's dicks yet. But here he is, trying to. It's friendly at this point, but you can already see on Andrew's face. If you can see in the right-hand corner, that's Andrew Wilson up there, the Crucible, with the cartoon Bruce Campbell thing from Evil Dead. That's Ash back there, and then the rock guitar. Can he play it? $5 says he can't play it. $10 says he can't play it. Well, he already looks like he is maybe filling his pants or choking back some bile. Something's going on. Something biological is happening there. Or maybe it's just been too long between cigarettes.
Hey, Andrew, we're all converting each other.
Andrew, why ought you obey God?
Why ought I obey God?
Yeah.
Via divine command. You realize I'm not a Christian apologist. I only argue from a secular framework, right?
He's not a Christian apologist. He only argues from a secular framework. This is going to go off the rails very, very quickly. Also, I want to say, since Warren and JL are having us, I'll debate anyone anytime, but also we haven't agreed to anything, and you're already poisoning the well. Do you see an issue with that? I don't know. I haven't seen the entire conversation to know if that's what's going on. If you too want to have a debate, I can set that up if you'd like to. I can play moderator if you'd like, or we could get another moderator in there if you wanted to. But if you wanted to do it on my channel, I would set that up if you wanted to have a go. The only thing that I would do is if you wanted to have a discussion, I would do kind of the same thing. I got this from MathPig a couple of years ago. I'd want you guys to decide on a topic that's debatable, not something super broad. Pick your positions on that one, and then create opening statements, and then send them to me to prepare for. If I'm the moderator, I want to look them over so that I'm prepared for what your opening statements are. Or if another person's going to be the moderator you decide on, you would send that to them, and then they have the ability to look at your opening statements, evaluate those, and then go for it. And then they know how to like handle questions and stuff like that. You guys would have to decide format. But yeah, just a thought. Lots of "I love you, bro" for Pine Creek considering his views on LGBTQ issues. Maybe his being a centrist is more of "Can I be the center of your guys' man sandwich?" Kind of. Well, and the interesting thing is that they said like, oh, P.F. Young is like, oh, I converted into centrist politics, enlightened centrism, and cultural Christianity. When we get a few minutes into this, Andrew gives a definition of Christian nationalism, and it basically wins Pine Creek over. So yeah, converting him to anything right of center in terms of political philosophy, or even just kind of practical politics, is not hard.
Why ought you obey God?
I'm not a Christian apologist, Doug. Talk to a Christian apologist.
Do you?
Why ought we not have Christian?
So you're saying you
nationalism,
shouldn't?
Doug?
That doesn't make sense. Like you can't answer that question without being an apologist. So the demand for apologetics in the Bible comes from we should be prepared to make a defense for what we believe, right? Whatever passage of the Bible that is, I always forget the verse. Be prepared to make a defense for your belief. That's not a commandment to a specific superclass of apologists authorized by the church to go out and engage in apologetics on behalf of the denomination. That's just you individually giving a defense for your faith. So if Doug's asking Andrew, like, why ought you believe God? He wants to know what Andrew thinks about that. And Andrew's response is going to constantly be like, I'm not authorized to speak on behalf of the Orthodox Christian Church on matters of Christian doctrine because I'm a catechumen. He'll get into that later. He's in the process of getting to the point where he gets baptized into the fold.
I didn't say anything, Doug. I said that I'm not authorized by the church to do Christian apologetics, and
you're
I can't
not
do it.
authorized by the church. You're under the control.
Notice Paul's reaction, because Paul's been having a lot of conversations with him about Christian morality, Christian ethics, how they form a framework for American society and American politics and jurisprudence, and blah, 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 the Judeo-Christian background for everything. Yeah. So even Paul's like, yeah, wait a minute.
All of the church?
Yeah.
Wait, what is this? What
I'm under I'm under the dominion of the church. What?
Where's your strings?
Andrew, I've never heard this. I've never heard this response from you.
Yeah, this is interesting.
Why can't you just answer?
Why?
Hold on. We're bringing on Jim Bob. This is not a dog pile. Andrew's got reinforcements.
First of all, let me answer the question.
Okay.
So that you understand. I'm Eastern Orthodox. In order to do Christian apologetics, I would have to be authorized to do so.
On behalf of the church, not on behalf of yours. I looked this up and could not find anything from Orthodox Church sources that say anything about a person having to do this. For one, my guess is if you're going to engage in apologetics on behalf of the church and their dogma, their theology, you would probably need to take some steps. You probably at least need to be baptized, which he admits a little later on. He's not. He's still in the catechumen stage. So, okay, fine. But that doesn't mean that as someone in this position, like, does the Orthodox Church tell Christians, people who are catechumen, You can't, if somebody asks you personally about your faith, you can't provide answers. Especially if a skeptic comes along and asks you some basic question like, why do you think there's a God? And if there is, and okay, you think there is one, why do you think you ought to do what you think it tells you?
I don't do Christian apologetics. I'm not authorized to do Christian apologetics, nor am I going to engage in Christian apologetics. I engage in secular argumentation. I'm a political debater. If you want to,
so he put a pin in that. He engages in secular discussions. He's a political debater. Casey Doug is a Christian? No. But I think he is in line with at least some of the arguments I've heard from guys like Paul, where he kind of accepts the notion that he's culturally Christian, which, I mean, makes sense. He was brought up Mennonite. A lot of the ethics and morals and life lessons and cognitive approaches to certain things are going to be ingrained in there. That's part of cultural Christianity.
talk to a Christian apologist, I can arrange so that you can
Are you a
talk to a
Christian?
Christian apologist. I am.
Do you believe that God gives commands?
Okay, so he's gonna back out of this question.
I can't engage in that.
Okay, hold on.
Yes, he can. He can, and he has. Pat says, as a former member of the Greek Orthodox Church, I can say with 100% certainty that what Andrew is saying is complete nonsense. Shows how uninformed he is about his quote-unquote faith. Right. I think if Andrew was here, he'd be like, Greek Orthodox, do you not understand? I'm Eastern Orthodox, and try to say that there's a massive difference between the two, even though when he was arguing about the difference between the Catholics and the Orthodox with Vosh on a debate, he minimized the distinction between the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church. But I bet he would maximize the differences between Greek Orthodox and Eastern Orthodox because this Andrew Wilson is incapable of having even a discussion in good faith, let alone a debate.
You cannot answer that question.
Hold on, because
I didn't say I couldn't answer the question. I said I'm not authorized to engage in Christian apologetics, which is what you're asking me to do.
It's still not. That is such horseshit. Again, this is from 5 months ago. This was Pine Creek's first run, and learned a little bit more about Andrew since the airing of this one, since Doug cut this one out, made this video. But we'll see where this goes.
Who's your bishop?
I'll tell you what. Let me ask you a question.
No. Okay.
Hang on, no, Doug.
I'm gonna.
Doug,
I already have an answer for you.
Let me ask you a question. Why is it not okay for me to adhere to my church? And if my church says that I'm not authorized to do Christian apologetics because I would need the blessing of a spiritual father to do so, why do you think that that's an own on me to obey that command?
On behalf of the church, yeah, there's a little bit of a distinction going on there. If you're doing apologetics as an official representative of a church, true. But if someone's asking you a question about that is basically like not even a challenge, but just from Doug, it's going to be, it's obviously going to be some kind of philosophical challenge because he debates this kind of stuff online. But for somebody to come along and be like, well, hey, I can't just go talking about my faith like that until I get the go ahead from, what did he call him? Spiritual father, whoever the hell that is. So yeah, this is just kind of, this is dumb. He's splitting hairs on this. Like, I'm not asking you to speak on behalf of the entire Eastern Orthodox organization. I'm asking you what you think. Doug didn't pick up on this and didn't kind of hone in on that. What he probably should have.
I'm not authorized to answer that question, Andrew.
Right. Well, the thing is that I also wouldn't push. I also wouldn't push that you had to be.
Okay, wait, hold on.
Why are we even having this discussion? I mean, you were just cross-examining me, and then you don't even want
when
to
did I bring up God? When did I bring up God, bro? When did I bring up God or Christian ethics?
I'm gonna mute everyone.
It's about morality. Why ought you obey what God tells you to do?
Wait, hold on.
It's a straightforward question about morality.
Okay, hold on. He gave his answer, so hold on. Doug, hold on, Andrew. I have not heard this from you. When we use the word apologetics, my assumption is talking about theology, what we were talking about with phenomenal conservatism and all that, and like where do we ground our morals. I have never heard you say this. I don't know, and I'm not forcing you to answer anything. I'm just curious because I'm going to
answer your question.
Okay, what does that mean?
Same thing with modern day debate. Okay, I agreed to do a debate with some asshole over there, some fat guy. I don't remember his name. Okay. Right, some douchebag. But I told him the same thing, right? These guys always want me to do Christian apologetics. And I told him I'm not authorized to do that We can do a debate on whether or not how Christianity affects culture or these types of secular things, but I don't have the authorization. I'm an Orthodox catechumen. I could easily misrepresent the church when their official canon. I'm not.
If you were acting as an apologist on behalf of the organization and you were expected to deliver, you're supposed to be representing the church's position on those issues. If you're a I don't know that the Orthodox Church is going to tell a catechumen that they can't talk about their faith. They could get aspects of their faith wrong. In fact, if they wanted to be responsible, if they're answering questions from skeptical family members and friends, like, or just, people, associates like Doug, they can talk about what they know and always put the caveat in there like, hey, I could be wrong about this. I'm still a catechumen. I'm not entirely sure what the church's position is on this. I'd have to get back to you on that, but this is kind of where I am with it, and I might be wrong with that, but, I'm still learning, blah, blah, blah. This is pretty easy stuff. The fact that Wilson's turning this into, no, I just don't have the credentials yet to talk about this, is a weird way of him kind of gatekeeping himself. But at the same time, if you haven't noticed, at what point is he going to say something is delineated between him being an apologist and him just being a quote unquote secular political debater? I think he's going to play kind of fast and loose with that. And if you think his standards are consistent, you're wrong.
Not authorized to do that, nor do I have any inclination to do that. I do politics and secular debating. Now, if Doug
secular debate, so that's all he's engaged in, is secular debating. He doesn't understand I don't know that he entirely understands what that means, and we'll see why here in a second.
Doug from Pine Creek, who only does this type of argumentation, has any line of inquiries towards that, I'm happy to have that debate. Do you think Doug's going to do that, though? No. What Doug will do instead is he'll say, well, I only want to talk about the one fucking thing on planet Earth that you're not authorized to discuss via your faith. So, Doug, do you have an argument for me which is in any way, shape, or form externalized to Christian apologetics? Because I don't think you do.
I'm not authorized to tell.
Yeah, that's right, Doug. That's what I thought, Doug.
No, but seriously, why would I answer your questions if you don't answer mine?
You don't have to, Doug. I'm just saying to you, in this particular instance,
when I asked you if you were a Christian, you were authorized to answer that one.
I'm not.
Are you a Christian?
Doug, repeat back to me what I told you.
You're not authorized by.
I want you to repeat back what I said verbatim.
I'm not authorized
or at least
to
close.
Repeat back to verbatim what
right.
You said.
So you don't fucking know. So just.
So Doug's being about as childish as Andrew is here. I just love this. Like, I can neither confirm nor deny my identity as a Christian, per my status as an Eastern Orthodox catechumen. Like, wait, you don't even need to ask him that. He's already said he's catechumen in the Eastern Orthodox Church. I'm just going to assume that means he's Christian. So why Andrew's even being cagey at this point is kind of dumb. He could have just told Doug, like, Doug, what the hell did I just say? I just admitted that I'm a catechumen in the Eastern Orthodox Church. That kind of implies that I'm Christian.
When I asked you if you were a Christian, you answered that. You were authorized to say you were a Christian.
Yes, I'm authorized to tell you that I'm an Orthodox catechumen too. But that doesn't mean that I can engage on apologetics on behalf of Orthodoxy, and I'm not going to.
So what things
on behalf of Orthodoxy? He keeps saying, like, I'm not asking, like, all they had to say, like, I'm not asking you to defend the church on its standards, practices, and dogma. I'm not. I'm asking you what you think. Can you answer me what you think?
Are you authorized to talk about what things?
I already gave you the complete list. Everything on planet Earth except Christian apologetics, Doug. Do you have any inquiries towards anything on planet Earth except Christian apologetics,
Doug? What I'm asking is what is contained in the Christian apologetics?
Anything which is in relationship to arguing with an atheist or a secularist on behalf of their moral framework.
He just said that he engages in secular debate, secular political debate, but if he's talking to secularists, so what's the difference? Is he a secularist because he engages in secular debate, or is a secularist just is that just synonymous with atheist? This is getting, I mean, you can see how these guys, this is a real meeting of the minds here.
Against the Christian moral framework, and that's what would be the entailment.
The Christian moral framework. If you are having a discussion with somebody who claims, like Andrew Wilson, to be having a secular debate about politics, and they're insisting on phrases like Judeo-Christian tradition, Judeo-Christian values, cultural Christianity, they are inserting concepts from Christian apologetics. They might not be inserting terms that they've gotten directly from the Eastern Orthodox Church or the Greek Orthodox Church or even the Roman Catholic Church, but they are definitely engaging in Christian apologetics. They're so ingrained in right-wing thought at this point that it is very difficult to see where one ends and the other begins. This is a completely sleazy position that Mr. Fart in a car keeps taking.
So isn't that what you do with me?
Would Christian nationalism fall under Christian apologetics?
No, because
yes. He's a fucking liar. It does. Most of the dogma argued for Christian nationalist positions comes out of an apologetic. A lot of it arises from something called Seven Mountain Dominionism or other forms of Christian dominionism. They kind of have that. They're really kind of taking it to its extreme. Christians have to take over the seven pillars, the seven mountains of society. Now, other Christian groups don't believe in this. And some of them will even call out Seven Mountain Dominionists and other groups of Dominionists for believing in things like extra biblical revelation, which they're all going to be, that's heretical. You can't be doing that. But a lot of the argumentation about what they all agree with is that the United States was founded as a Christian nation. The United States was founded under the Judeo-Christian, big quotes there, take that with a massive grain of salt, traditions and rules. How that complies with the Enlightenment values, they're really flaky on. Those are all apologetics used to justify Christian domination and sort of a guaranteed position in political discussion by saying, this is how things are, this is how things were, and this is how they will remain because Christian cultural Christianity is supreme. That is Christian nationalism. It is an apologetic. It is a dogma. The fact that he's going to sit here and be like, no, Christian nationalism is not about that. Now he's going to attempt to give this. Now remember what he said he was. He is a secular political debater.
Is what you're going to do. I would make secular arguments for why Christian nationalism is good, which you would not be able to refute. Your entire line of inquiry in a Christian nationalism
We can talk
debate,
about that then.
Doug, let me finish. Your entire inquiry in a Christian nationalist debate is just going to be, but God not real. You're not going to have any real arguments. And
now, Andrew might actually have a point here because Andrew's position on this has been really dumb in the past. He doesn't care if God's not real. What he likes is authoritarianism. So he has stated in the past that even if you don't believe in a God, especially like a monotheistic tradition like Islam or Christianity, it doesn't matter. It's better to hold to that because why? Because it gives you the grounding and the justification for authoritarian systems, which he prefers. So in a way, he's not being completely dishonest there. Like, oh, all you're going to tell me is that God's not real, therefore this stuff has to fall apart. Andrew Wilson is very much, I don't care if God's not real. What I like the cut of this Christian nationalist thing going on here. I like their vibe. I like their package. It's about me being the head of my family and having a wife that does what I tell her and having lots of kids. Women don't work. They stay in the home. They take care of all my kids. I get to go to work and earn lots of money and hang out with the boys and have the cigars and the brandy at night and do this kind of stuff because that's how God said it was going to be. And I agree with that. So that's how I say it's going to be. And this is a pretty sweet gig. Do you believe in Yahweh and Jesus? As far as he's concerned, he'll just talk around his cigarettes. Sure. Jesus has been great for me. Even if Jesus is in quotation marks with a trademark after it, and it's just like, the flavor of the political philosophy he happens to like, because it exalts him, grants him power, grants him excuses, and puts women in their place. He's a piece of shit. Pat says, given the history of the Eastern Orthodox Church when it comes to Judaism, Andrew might want to keep the Judeo part out of Judeo-Christian, out of his uninformed mouth. Well, that's the thing. I don't know how often he's actually said Judeo-Christian, but it's all a part of the piece. It's sort of the PragerU version of it. Dennis Prager does that. Ben Shapiro does that. To be fair, I don't know that Andrew Wilson has ever allowed those words, the Judeo-Christian thing, to come out. But when he's talking about these debates, where he's arguing for the Christian nationalist perspective on things, it's the same foundational apologetic and dogma that Prager is giving voice to and Ben Shapiro is paying lip service to. Exact same shit. But a good point, Pat.
Demonstrate that for you as we get into this debate. Go ahead, Doug. What inquiries do you have for Christian nationalism?
Yeah.
Is God real? Is God? Go ahead, Doug. Just say it. That's all you're gonna have, right, Doug?
No. I'm if a Hindu in the United States is under your whatever, we haven't even defined Christian nationalism yet.
That would be a good place to start, I guess.
Yeah.
You could have volunteered that, Andrew.
Yeah. So, well, why don't you define it then?
Good place to start. Here we go. 5 months ago, Andrew Wilson's definition of Christian nationalism. Let's go.
Christian nationalism is the pushing for a synergistic relationship between the church and the state over an elongated period of time to get rid of the stigmatization of Christians also being able to rule instead of just secularists who seem to think that they're the only ones who are allowed to rule.
You know what? Under that definition, I'm not against it.
That's right, Doug. That's right. And I never thought that you would be. I didn't think.
Listen to that again.
You know what?
Instead of stigmatization of the state over an along pushing for a synergistic relation.
Well, why don't you define it then?
Here we go.
Christian nationalism is the pushing for a synergistic relationship between the church and the state over an elongated period of.
You can see Paul's reaction there in the center. He's raising his hands. This is an apologetic. Christian nationalism is not about synergizing the relationship between the church and the state. That is not what it is about. A synergistic, usually defined as talking about a relationship that leads to productivity and creativity, a kind of cooperation that yields positive results. So I think it's interesting he's thrown a little corpo speak in there, like, oh, okay, well, it's a synergism between the church and the state to bring about an even better, more enlightened government. That's not what Christian nationalism is looking for. That might be what they're trying to say. What we want, all we want, is a place at the table. No, they don't. Any Christian nationalist that tells you that they want a, quote, place at the table has confused what Christian nationalism is based on. Christian nationalism's goal is the table. They want the table. And everyone else has to come and prove themselves in a litmus test, some kind of scheme where they are appropriately conservative and Christian enough to even participate in the first place. And if not, they will be relegated to a second or third class status, either in public life or in actual life, depending on where you are. It is, if you follow the logical entailments of Christian nationalism, it lends itself to fascism. It requires authoritarianism to put itself into place, and it requires the recognition of second, third, and lower classes of citizens, of participants in public life. It just does. So he's trying to say what we need is a synergism between the church and the state. How are you going to get a synergism between the church and the state when you have various denominations with he can't even argue. He's already excluded himself from attempting to argue on behalf of the Eastern Orthodox Church because he's only a catechumen. So what religion, what church, actual established denomination is going to be working, quote unquote, synergistically with the government to facilitate this? And why would it be Christian as opposed to why wouldn't the government decide to work with Judaism? Like, no, you know what? Christians, you're wrong. Or Islam. No, we'll work with them. We'll create a synergistic relationship with a new American caliphate. Or a Jerusalem, a national synagogue kind of thing. We'll do this. An establishment of this is essentially an established religion. It's going to violate that aspect of our Constitution. The government recognizes that this needs to happen. A synergistic relationship. They want dominance, not synergism. And then he says, oh, and what we also want to do is remove the stigma of Christians who are, so that secularists are supposedly the only ones that can serve. A secularist is not somebody who is not Christian. Joe Biden is a secular president in that he serves in the office of the presidency. He is a Roman Catholic. He's a Christian who is actively in the highest office of the land. One of the most powerful people in the world. He's a Catholic. So this is horseshit. The fact that he separates some of his religious dogma and convictions from his duties as president, that separation is secular. It's the same separation that Andrew is practicing when he says he's only doing a secular political debate or secular political discussion. So now he's shifted this a little bit. He can do this for the purposes of his little talk show and for demonizing, and doing all this crazy shit. But what we really need is a Christian nationalism that allows Christians to come up and just say, I'm a Christian president, I'm a Christian senator. There's already tons of them. They're already there. The trick with Christian nationalism is to allow those Christian senators and Christian congresspeople to manage you as if they're running your life from a church or from a pulpit, not engaging with their constituents as representatives limited by their secular standing as a representative. That's the distinct. We already have that distinction. Christian nationalists want to move this. The stigma that he's talking about, not there. The stigma is brought by Christians who are in those positions, who abandon the secular separation between government and the church and try to legislate as if they want people to behave according to what their dogma and their apologetics demands. That's where the stigma comes from. The stigma is not coming from a bunch of God-hating atheists. There's not that many atheists to go around. The stigma happens when Christians try to manage people instead of representing them. And they're trying to manage them as if they're in Sunday school. Andrew, I think, knows this. I don't think he's that dumb. But he doesn't understand. If he is aware of these connections, he is misrepresenting these entailments completely.
Time to get rid of the stigmatization of Christians.
Not a thing. And if it is, it's usually Christians' fault. The stigmatization that usually comes out regarding Christians are usually things like the book bans down in Florida, or the trans bills that they try to pass, bathroom bills, the kind of pearl-clutching horse shit that you see in a lot of red states where people are flipping out over stuff that is none of their business. And they want laws passed. They want the government to do something about this. And many of the people doing the pearl-clutching, they're devout Christian congresspeople and senators. And many of them in that particular coalition are not afraid to insert their religious dogma and opinions into the debate and legislate according to their narrow-minded takes and their identity politics regarding their Christian identity, their Christian national. I'm a proud American and I'm about Jesus and I carry a gun and I'll defend this country in the name of the blood of the Lamb and all this kind of crap. They're fucking psychos. They're all fucking psychos. This is identity politics. It's pride. It's vanity. Has nothing to do with the message of Jesus or any of the gospels for that matter. Has nothing to do with taking care of the poor and dealing with the suffering. Look at the way Christian nationalists have been reacting and other conservative politicians have been reacting to the migrants that are coming into this country. The first thing that they need to do is build a wall and fill it with razors and wires and glass and guns and men with guns to keep them from ever coming across in the first place because we just don't want to acknowledge the problem. And now that they're here and looking for help, that we don't want to acknowledge that they do need help and that they are suffering because Christians are failing at being Christians. The basic thing they're supposed to be doing, taking care of the poor, seeing to the suffering, helping the needy. They can't fucking do it. They're too busy posturing and doing what this guy's doing and demanding the table, not a seat at the table, the table. They want it all, not a piece, all of it. They already have a huge sway in this country.
Also being able to rule instead of just secularists who seem to think that they're the only ones who are allowed to rule.
Find me a secularist. If Andrew can identify a secularist, I bet I can find out where that person goes to church and can hear that person justify their secular position and their role as a political representative the same way that Andrew justifies his position as an online internet commentator. I engage in secular political debate. I'm not authorized to talk about apologetics on behalf of the Orthodox Church. Great. That makes you a secularist, Andrew. You're a fucking secularist too. He's a fucking moron. I keep hearing Christians say that we need to come to God of our own volition to accept him as Lord and Savior. And then many advocate for making the Lord bit compulsory. Exactly. And if you're a Seven Mountains Dominionist, you believe that unless Christians dominate those 7 mountains of society, it's family, education, business, entertainment, science, blah, 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 and the other 2. If they don't take over those things, the revelation that they've had, some of them have had, is that God can't come back. So basically they have to ready the planet for the kingdom of God to pop down. which is an interesting take on things because Paul thought it was coming right away. He thought that Jesus being resurrected was a sign that we were already in the end times. It's only a matter of time before the kingdom of God descends, literally descends, and establishes its reign on the earth. It didn't happen for him. It's not going to happen for them. But once they do take over, if that's what they could do, they take over completely, and then God doesn't immediately come back, they'll just find ways to justify why that hasn't happened yet. Maybe there just aren't enough. Maybe we have to convert absolutely everyone. Maybe it's just not pure enough yet. I think you can see where that would end up.
You know what? Under that definition, I'm not against it.
Doug, you should be against it because that's not a good definition of what Christian nationalism is. And also there's a couple contradictions in that definition. The idea that, well, the Christians want a chance to rule things, not just the secularists. That is a fantasy created by Christians. And the reason they created that is because the notion of secularism is repellent to them. They don't want a pluralist society. They want to eliminate pluralism and then position themselves as the religion of choice because they're the ones that are already in cultural dominance. They want to completely shed the idea of secular separation. That's why they keep conflating. Well, if you're a secularist, you're a non-believer. No, you're not. And Andrew's already admitted that because he's saying he's engaging in secular political debate and discussion. Is he saying he's an atheist? No. So I don't understand why he's able to use it then, but then he turns around and uses this definition like, well, Christians want a chance to be at the wheel instead of these secularists who claim they're the only ones that can run shit. No. Secularists are Christian. They just understand their job description. They're not trying to turn their job into a pulpit. That's the difference.
That's right, Doug. That's right. And I never thought that you would be. I didn't think anybody would ever be against
I think
it.
Christians should have the right to be in government. Yeah.
Jim Bob, are you qualified to do apologetics on behalf of the church?
I was going to ask the exact same question.
Not on behalf. Not on behalf.
Yeah, but do you not understand too the distinction? That
So hold on, I genuinely
hang on.
do not understand your
logic
response to
and
that.
reason and philosophy and everything on planet Earth is on the table. I just can't engage in direct apologetics on behalf of the Orthodox Church. That's it.
Adrian,
How hard could it possibly be to direct your inquiry?
Okay, well, if you're making that distinction, Andrew, why couldn't you answer Doug's question about why you ought to obey God? What did that have to do with him arguing on behalf of the organization? Doug wanted to know what you thought, not what the Orthodox Church teaches.
I have never heard you say this line in any conversation you've ever had.
Many times, by the way.
But everything that we were talking about, like phenomenal conservatism, theology, and all that, is that
all
not
logic and
I could
reason
find
and
a loophole
everything?
for Andrew. I could find a loophole for him.
All right, what's the loophole?
The loophole is, Andrew, can you imagine that you're not an Orthodox? Can you speak on behalf of someone that you're not for a bit?
Yes, I can. So what I can do is if you have a logical, philosophical, reasoned inquiry, and you're not directing it towards my personal belief in
Okay,
orthodoxy.
so I'm not directing it
sure.
towards your personal belief. Why ought Jim Bob obey God?
Now watch Andrew give an answer. Andrew Wilson self-admittedly on the Whatever podcast compelled his wife to take a paternity test. That doesn't surprise me. He's a pig.
Jim Bob has a divine command to do so.
So why couldn't Andrew talk about this with regards to himself? He's saying that the reason Jim Bob has to obey Jim Bob's God is because Jim Bob has a divine command from Jim Bob's God. Isn't Jim Bob's God Andrew's God? And if you're going to assert the idea that, no, Jim Bob has to do what God says because God said it. It's a divine command. Cool. Justify that. How do you demonstrate that that's in fact the case? Well, this will be interesting if he goes.
So what?
He's going to go.
Why would that
follow
be
that divine command?
Why would that be a so what statement? I'm curious.
Why ought Jim Bob?
I just
follow
answered your
that
question. He has a divine command,
Yeah.
self-explanatory.
Okay. Here's my follow-up question. Why ought Jim Bob follow that divine command?
Because if Jim Bob does not follow that divine command, what happens to Jim Bob?
You tell me.
He goes to hell, right?
I just asked you a question, right?
You tell me. I don't know. You tell me.
well, if Jim Bob does not follow his divine command in his faith, not only would he be logically inconsistent in his faith structure, but secondly, there could be some consequence at the end of that, which would be not good.
Excellent. Now, now Chris could give the exact same answer to you when you asked him why he ought to do certain things.
Yes, but try to remember that
You're welcome,
Christian. Try to remember though, Doug. Try to remember that just because there's overlap between consequentialism, deontology, and Christian ethics does not mean that you don't have occasionally duties which would overlap with consequentialism. That's not a good argument, by the way, Pine Creek Doug, because if there's overlap, just having overlap is meaningless. You haven't solved any problem.
Okay, so to solve the problem, you just assert a divine command. How does that solve the problem? Because now, if Jim Bob is doing essentially the same thing that Chris is doing, Chris believes that he's being held to, say, some kind of consequentialism or harm reduction or some kind of thing like that. If he doesn't do that, then either he'll feel bad about it or he'll let friends and family down or something, whatever consequentialism or lack of pragmatism, or, maybe he is a deontologist in some way, some kind of, he believes in some kind of social deontology. And then Jim Bob's, how would that be any different than if Jim Bob said, yeah, well, I do the same things, but that's because God told me to. Okay. At least in Chris's case, Chris can be like, well, the reason that I'm doing this is because this is kind of how I think people should probably interact amongst each other. It's at least grounded in human interaction. Jim Bob is just going to have to go back to, well, God said I have to, and if I don't do it, I'm going to go to the naughty place after I'm dead. The fiery pokey place. Where'd you get that from? There really isn't a description of hell like that in any parts of the Bible. You're just getting that from Christian tradition. So how are you grounding that? Are you grounding it in your understanding of the Bible? Are these guys sola scriptura types of Protestants, or is this grounded in something a little bit more of Christian tradition, Christian negotiations with texts? And if that's the case, can they point to that?
Well, what's the problem? What is the problem you think you solved?
You were trying to question how do you get an ought from an is, correct? Yeah. And then I asked you, how does Jim Bob get an ought from an is? You answered very correctly, in my opinion. You gave a great answer. And
well, no,
Chris,
that's not...
a guy like Chris could give a similar answer, if not exact same answer, just leaving the God part out.
How?
You're welcome.
How does he leave the God part out?
By leaving it out, Andrew. Pat writes, can you believe that there are 95 people, this means you, that have nothing better to do than to waste their time watching Andrew shit all over himself? Hit that thumbs up button. Thanks, Pat, for that. I'm going to wrap this up here pretty quick.
By not saying the word God.
So then we've moved into preference.
Oh, that is an apologetic. If you don't have a divine command, then all you have is preference. That is classic Christian apologetic 101. Oh, it's just his subjective feeling. It's just his preference. He didn't reason his way through this, right? It might be Chris's subjective preference to not be nice to people, to be stingy, to not even help out his family. That might be his preference. But he's reasoned through things like consequentialism and deontology and other ethical frameworks, and he kind of compels himself like, no, sometimes I do have to fight against my own self-centeredness. I'm not saying this is what Chris has said. I'm just saying as an example. I fight against my own self-centeredness. I fight against sometimes my own self-involvement, and I push myself to be a person who's more available and helpful to the people in my life and people at work, et cetera, right? He's reasoned his way to doing this. That's not a subjective preference. That's a reasoned conclusion about how he thinks he should behave with other people around him. That's not simply preference. These guys do this all the, oh, you just made a decision about, like, okay, yeah, he made a reasoned decision about it, and he can ground those decisions based on the reasons that he gave. You can follow the bread trail, like, and they're just like, oh, it's just a preference. He just feels better doing that, so he doesn't. That doesn't follow. His preferences could go the entirely opposite direction. He wants to just lock himself up. He can't be bothered with charity, can't be bothered with helping people. His mom or dad call and need help. He goes to voicemail, right? But he doesn't act on, his most self-involved traits. This is bullshit. So the only way that you can get out of that just a preference is to be, well, somebody needs to be telling you that you have to do that. Chris could be telling himself he needs to do that. His preferences be damned. And Andrew's thing is like, well, no. He has to have God in there. Otherwise, if you're not being told to do the right thing, you won't.
Yeah, and Jim Bob's preference is to
It's
obey
not
God.
preference, not preference.
What?
If
He doesn't have free will?
It's not preference if it's divine command, right?
Oh,
it's God's preference then, right?
Divine makes it special.
Also,
Why
well,
wouldn't it?
Pine Creek, the preference part wouldn't be the thing that determines, because I could have a preference of doing something that feels good in the short term, but maybe harms me in the long term, or maybe
I would prefer to have a cigarette and a glass of whiskey right now, but I know how both are going to make me feel. I would prefer right now. My preference would be to be indulging in both of those things right now. But I know long term the consequences of engaging in both of those would probably make me feel like shit. So I'm not doing that right now. I'm not giving into the preference. And I've reasoned that from consequentialism. If I have some smokes and if I have some alcohol, I might feel good for about 20 or 30 minutes, and afterward I'm going to start feeling like crap. That's part of getting older. I gave up smoking about 10 years ago, and drinking I'm still in the process of completely giving up, but I haven't quite made it there yet. But it still makes me feel like crap. The older you get, the longer it takes to recover from any amount of, even a moderate amount of drinking. It sucks. So yeah, my preference would be to let's have some drinks, let's have some smokes, let's party as much as we can. But I'm going to be, recovering, quote unquote. Let's face it, I will be basically crippled for like 48 hours minimum recovering from that kind of stuff. You can do that in your 20s. You can't do it in your 40s. Some people can, though. I don't know how they do it, but great livers, something, I don't know. So yeah, Jim Bob's actually kind of hitting on this, and this is key. I'll wrap this up after he makes his point. Let's see how Andrew twists this.
don't care like that it hurts me or whatever. So, I mean, our preferences can be changed moment to moment, right? We can be completely inconsistent with our preferences day to day.
Or you could be programmed to have that preference.
Programmed by what?
Well, I gotta pee. Don't say the N-word. That's it. Go ahead.
We're not gonna wreck your stream. Programmed by what?
God.
Inward. No, I'm kidding. Programmed by what?
God. I said 3 times now.
Okay, so we're pre-programmed by God. So like the Calvinist argument?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Chris, the problem is, as Pine Creek already just conceded to, is that even in his worldview, everything's determined, including beliefs, which is why Andrew said, why aren't you a Christian? He said, because
I don't know if Pine Creek actually does believe that. The one thing that you can make the claim on certain apologists like Darth Dawkins, the entailment of their ideas does lead itself to a kind of determinism. If you believe that the metaphysical foundation is a mind, God, and it's responsible for everything that's possible and impossible, I don't know why he puts that in there, but everything that's possible in reality, then there is a kind of determinism based on that. The only way that you're getting away with anything is because God needs that, because it's part of his redemptive plan for man. So what does morality mean in the scope of that? You're going to make your choices, but God knows what choices you're going to make. And ultimately those choices, that stuff is going to happen because he needs it to happen that way. He wants it to happen that way. It's already been preordained. I don't understand how these guys don't get this.
Because I'm determined not to be. But the problem, Pine Creek, and I don't know if you've come up against this, is that the worldview itself, you have no access to knowledge at all. Like, it's impossible.
Yeah, you can't.
Do you see why? Why it's impossible?
No, because nobody with a transcendental argument has been able to actually demonstrate that that access to knowledge is impossible unless you assume the truth of either the God that is the foundation of the ontology of all the things that exist, or if you're assuming the Platonic forms or something like that. The weird thing about this is that if Doug wanted to be kind of a little bit dishonest, he could just be like, well, in that sense, I'm kind of a Neoplatonist. And so you guys aren't assuming the Platonic forms. And so because you're not doing that, I don't think that you have access to real knowledge claims. At least, maybe you have provisional ones, but not really. You can't really make your case because you're denying the metaphysical foundation for it. The interesting thing about that in terms of like Platonism, Neoplatonism, I don't think they would ever make that argument because it's not germane to the argument. The fact that people can know what something is in this realm and not understand where that thing is deriving its ultimate, its ultimate properties from, the ultimate stuff in the Platonic ether where the pure forms exist, doesn't matter. They're affirming that those properties exist when they're talking about them, when they're recognizing them, when they're working with them and dealing with them in reality. I don't know if Jim Bob and Andrew do this kind of stuff. My understanding is Derek went on the show made by Jim Bob, and he got like, kind of dogpiled by a bunch of people that were doing like running precept on him. I haven't seen it yet. I think it's from about 2 weeks ago. I need to find it and see like what they do, because I don't know if they're all running like precept game on them or if they're running like like a combination of precept or ontological arguments or transcendental arguments, or if it's just solid precept. But apparently it got under his skin. And thanks for that, Ronnie. I appreciate that. Let's see. Audience with a taste for horror. Yeah, that's me.
Why it's impossible to have knowledge depends how you define knowledge.
Any evaluation of a truth claim.
Any
evaluation. Not even
any evaluation of a truth claim.
Even the result of it, which would be knowledge. Any evaluating, the very method of evaluating two different claims,
this is the tag
impossible.
argument, right?
Well, no, don't. It's not about framing what it is. It's that it's the consequence of. I'll put it simple. Pine Creek makes an opinion, right? Opinion A.
Yeah.
Jim Bob makes opinion B. Now, Chris, as a third party, he's trying to evaluate between the two things, right?
Yep.
That's kind of what argumentation is, right? That's what we do here. Correct?
Yep.
Okay. So if opinion A is determined and opinion B is determined, then so is Chris's evaluation. So what methodology outside of that mechanism do we have access to any knowledge?
Yeah. How do we know?
Well, you could get into sort of the correspondence theory of truth, so Doug let's say that Doug has an opinion about the border, and Chris has an opinion about, and Jim Bob has an opinion about the border. And Jim Bob's opinion about the border is that it's a crisis. And Doug's opinion about the border is that it's no big deal. But it doesn't really rise to the level of a crisis, just hypothetical. Chris is trying to evaluate which one is which. So what is Chris going to do when he's evaluating opinions? He's going to try to look for objective facts outside of these two guys' opinions. He's going to try to look for what facts are available that substantiate the actual state of affairs in the world around him. Jim Bob says crisis. Doug says no big deal. Chris is in a position to try to evaluate one opinion over the other. And when it comes to opinions, it gets a little bit dicier because both of them can be a little bit right and both of them can be a little bit wrong. Both of them can be completely wrong. But neither one of them may be right. And maybe, who knows? But this idea that what you need, I bet this is where Jim Bob and Andrew, what you need is the guy that knows everything to step in and say, Doug's right or Jim Bob's right. Otherwise, Chris can't know shit. That's the implication. If God's not there to determine the truth value between Doug's opinion and Jim Bob's opinion, Chris can't know a thing. He doesn't have the God-given, which is weird because reason is something granted to us by God. So for whatever reason, the capacity that we have with our brains, supposedly granted to us by God, to think through this stuff and do this investigation is insufficient, even though it's a gift from God, to arrive at truth claims unless we acknowledge that God is the basis, unless we acknowledge that God is determining what is true and false. That doesn't follow. How do you get to that? And if your only defense is, well, because God makes everything. Nope. That doesn't follow. That's just skipping back to ontology.
Through tested observation?
That's determined.
That's determined.
determined.
Yeah, but why does it being determined make it less so?
Well, even if
Because-
it was, hang on, even that makes no sense. Your rejoinder
Like, for
question
example-
actually doesn't make any sense. What he's saying that it's also under your worldview. So since it's also under your worldview, you have no way to arbitrate who's telling the truth, who has the knowledge, who doesn't, because it's all predetermined according.
So we just okay. So where are these guys going to get God to weigh in on this? Where does God weigh in on the border issue in the United States in the scriptures? Or can you pray about it and get a feeling? I mean,
to you.
Well, no, but my question is, just because it's predetermined, why does it not make it knowledge?
Because you don't know what knowledge is and isn't if the conclusion.
How do you
came
know
to-
what knowledge is or isn't?
Well,
Jim?
whether he
first
does or
let's see.
he doesn't, answer his
First-
question.
First deal with your situation.
Okay, so let's say the question is, how do I know this pen will fall towards the ground if I let go? So here's one way we can do it. Is
Yeah.
that good enough?
No.
Why?
Begging the question.
I've proven nothing.
That's just
really? That's begging the question. He didn't know where the pen was going to go. If he insisted on a conclusion before he knew that it was going to happen, and then it happened, then you might say he's making an argument that's begging the question. Like, how do we know about this pen? What's going to happen to this pen if I let it go? We just saw what happens if I let the pen go. I'm holding it up here and I release it. It falls. That's not begging the question.
it's a phrase that people put out when they don't know what to say, begging the question.
No,
Andrew does it a lot.
No, that's not true, Doug. Andrew does get it wrong.
Problem is Pine Creek. If you were just predetermined,
Andrew looks a little pained that Pine Creek and Paul are laughing at him.
That's
to
because
drop
people
the
are always
pen,
begging the question.
right? If you were
Well, Christian precept usually begs the question quite a bit. We can't know anything because God is the creator of absolutely everything. Well, how do you know that? Well, because you can't know anything unless God were the creator of everything. Cool.
we're determined to drop the pen,
I
and we
answered
were
your question.
deter-
I'll answer mine. How do you know?
You didn't answer the question.
Yeah, I did.
You dropped the
I
pen.
demonstrated it.
You dropped the pin.
Oh,
That's not an
no.
illustration nor an answer to the
You
question.
didn't do
That's
anything.
That what?
predetermined that you dropped that pin, Pine Creek.
Okay, now Jesus, this is just a meeting of the minds here. No. It is an illustration of a type of a way that humans can gain knowledge about something. You can do it through experimentation. You can do it through physical demonstration. If these guys want to, well, no. How do you know that 5 minutes from now you don't let go of that pen and it goes flying skyward? Well, are we living in a reality? God made the earth. Let's just put this in the Christian mechanistic worldview. God made the earth and it's hurtling through space and it's spinning around a star called the sun. And it's spinning at a rate that it achieves a certain consistent gravity. The only way that pen is going to fly up instead of flying towards the ground is if something happens systematically to the nature of physics in the solar system that God built to change that. That's all it takes. These guys are living in this is like some just before the classical age kind of like we don't have any idea why gravity is doing this. This is absurd. And unless you acknowledge the existence of the Christian God and you explicitly give him credit when you talk about gravity or talk about anything else, you don't know anything. What kind of fallacy does that sound like?
Let me do this then. I'll be very kind to you guys. I don't know. Now answer my question. How do you know what
How do I know
knowledge
what?
is?
Knowledge?
Yeah.
Well, at first I would look at what is truth, what is knowledge, right? How do we categorize?
Yeah, and I
what
asked you that
is?
to define it, and you defined it. So how do you know what is true? How do you know you have knowledge?
How do I know I have knowledge? Well, no, I have faith that I have knowledge.
You're stumbling a little bit, aren't you?
But
how do you
hang on.
know?
Well, okay. He says he has faith. He has knowledge. Jail writes, it's like none of these guys have read Wittgenstein. Knowledge does not have to be absolute to be knowledge, right? And it doesn't sound like it has to be absolute for Jim Bob. He has faith that he has knowledge. That's good enough. Maybe I could be wrong, but I'm getting the impression this is what JC's communicating to me. Pen gonna fall to the ground if I let it go.
Hang on,
You're not letting me answer.
Pine Creek. Also, why would we care to justify to somebody who doesn't know what knowledge is? There's
yeah,
no
you-
answer we could give that would be satisfactory because you have no metric for which to evaluate it by your own
Justified
admission.
true
That's a cop out.
belief.
Okay.
How about
He
that?
just said he
Justified
couldn't
true belief.
justify any true
A
belief. He
justified
doesn't
true
know.
belief.
Hold
He
on,
doesn't
hold on,
know.
hold on. Pine Creek, go ahead,
Justified-
Chris.
Andrew's getting confused because he's laughing now.
Said justified true belief. Is that
Is that okay?
fair?
Jim Bob, yeah. How do you know what's true?
I said I have faith.
What does that
It's
mean?
not. It's not a knowledge claim.
What does that mean? Oh,
You can have knowledge so long as it's not a knowledge claim. Okay. All right. I think I'm going to shut this down. This is the dumbest thing I've heard in a
so
long
you don't
time.
have knowledge?
No, I have faith. All knowledge is faith based. That's my position.
Agreed. Phenomenal conservatism. That's what I've
Okay,
been
hang
saying.
on. Hang on. This is getting good. Define faith for me.
Faith is basically evidence for that which is unseen.
That's a deepity. Right? Evidence for that which is unseen, unheard, yada, 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 yada. Okay. How, in what way is that evidence? Right? That's just a feeling. I have a sense that something's right, and that's how it's going to work. Pat, my faith is my knowledge is my faith. And in their worldview, it's not a circle. It's an undeniable reality. Yeah, this is making my eyes roll so hard. I'm starting to give myself a headache. I think I'm just going to wrap this up here because this isn't going to get anywhere. But yeah, really I went way over on this one, so I can wrap this up now. So happy Saturday, folks. Sorry to inflict this on the viewers, but my favorite bit was Andrew attempting to define Christian nationalism in a way that I think even certain Christian nationalists would use that kind of chicken shit definition, like, we just want a place at the table. We just want to be recognized like the secularists are. Like, fuck off. No, you fucking don't. I've seen the backroom discussions these people have had about getting involved in government. I've watched the clips of them talking on their little circle jerk news shows and stuff, talking about how they're going to take over and practically run roughshod over the heathen and the Muslim and the Jew and the heretic. Like, they're fucking insane. They're fascists with a Bible and a grin. That's it. Andrew, yeah, smoke another. Keep smoking. Smoke more, please. Speed it up. Maya, thanks for giving into peer pressure. You've got one of the best lives on the internet. Thank you. I appreciate that, Maya. And sorry for getting into like preachy ranty time, but my God, Andrew Wilson is just the worst. The worst. I think I dislike him more than Greg Locke, mostly because Greg Locke makes me laugh. His rage is cartoonish. So with that being said, let's close that down. Thanks, folks, for being here. Thank you for a lively conversation in the side chat. Got really lively between Warren and JL. JL, you guys, if you do want to do a debate, like I said, no pressure. You don't have to do it on my channel. But if you are looking for a channel to do a debate, you want me to host it, or you'd like me to host it, step away as a moderator and get another moderator in there, we can work that out. Usually if it's a debate kind of thing like that, I'll kind of do that in conjunction with Peter DeTucker. He's always happy to do those. He loves doing those. I'd reach out to him to kind of set up some different stuff. And yeah, we can do it. Reach out to me. I usually give my email address. It should be in my profile, but jeffersonspatchcock@gmail.com. Hit me up on there or hit me up on Discord. I think I'm in contact with both of you there. Let me know if you want to do it. If you don't, no big deal. But oh, and thank you very much for the super chat. Hotel Yugoslavia, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And I think they're still trying to. JL wants to know if there's something substantive going on. Okay, well, we'll see. Glass house, go off, Queen. I appreciate that, Maya. I haven't seen you go into a good long rant in a while, or maybe I've just missed those portions of your live shows. Okay, folks, with that being said, I'm going to sign off. This has been fun. Again, I'm going to try to set this up. I don't know if there's going to be a set time. A few other people I know, Bree from Hive Sci, she goes live Saturdays at 10. I'm trying to figure out a reasonable, consistent time to do this, but I do want to start doing a consistent Saturday show every week at least. and then my spontaneous stuff during the week, you know, as when the Darth Dawkins derangement fever really kicks in and I get too triggered and can't hold it in. So we'll see. With that being said, thank you everyone again for being here. Thank you for super chats, for the comments, for keeping it lively and entertaining. It's always fun. I hope you enjoyed this. Like, subscribe, or don't. Do whatever you got to do. And if you got any suggestions, again, my email, jeffersonspatchcock@gmail.com, or you can reach me on the Blue Sky, Twitter, X if you're nasty stuff, you know, that's out there. So yeah, that should do it. I will catch you all later. Have a great weekend.